Let's touch on those passenger numbers, first of all, if we can. Just break down for us where we stand relative to those pre-pandemic peaks.
Well, we're still currently about 25% below where we were pre-pandemic. Actually, at the moment, that's more like 15 to 20% below because the market has been recovering through the second half of the year. But I think it'll take us until 2025, 2026 before we get back to the full level of demand that we saw before the pandemic.
And what's played catch up quicker, leisure travel or business travel, short haul or long haul?
It's been very much about leisure travel. So what we saw as soon as markets started to open in March, everyone wanted to catch up on the holidays they hadn't been able to have for the last couple of years. So we saw a lot of people going away for weekend breaks. Holiday season's very busy. And so the peaks have been very busy. Some peak days have been as busy as they were pre-pandemic. But outside of those peak times, it is much quieter. And that's why we are encouraging all of the companies that work at Heathrow to provide services to scale up back to the full capacity they had before the pandemic so that we can meet peak demand whenever that may come.
And let's talk about that balance, because clearly one of the reasons this industry and you're part of it in particular hasn't got closer to pre-pandemic levels has been the supply, not the demand, and some of those limits that you are putting in place on passenger travel numbers. That limit is coming off, is it, very soon? But might it have to come back on as we get to the busy Christmas period?
Yes, and if I can just give you some context. So before the pandemic, about 75,000 people worked at Heathrow. 10% of them worked directly for us as the airport operator and the rest for airlines and ground handlers. And during the pandemic, those numbers fell by about 25,000 people. So down to about 50,000 this time last year. And what we've been encouraging people to do, and we've been doing ourselves, is to scale up as fast as we can to get back to full capacity. And what we found before the summer peak at the end of June, beginning of July, was that the demand was slightly ahead of where the capacity was at that time. So we put a cap in place. And what that did was to protect people's journeys over the summer. So we had 18 million people traveling over the summer. Service levels actually close to where they were in 2019. So that's a real achievement by all of my colleagues here at Heathrow to serve our passengers. But we're not yet back to where we were pre-pandemic. So we have a cap in place. It's coming off in the next few days. It actually hasn't affected any travel over the last few months because demand has been below the level of the cap. But we think that there may be some peak days over Christmas and maybe even into next year where we may have demand slightly ahead of supply. So we're just going to have a mechanism in the background that you won't notice if you're a traveller, that will just make sure that we can guarantee a smooth service when you're travelling through Heathrow.
I'm not sure, John, what metric allows you to say that service levels were as good this summer as in past years. I'm not sure that was all consumers' experience. But park that issue to the side. I think it's fair to say over the summer that airlines themselves took the brunt of the criticism. Did you feel sorry for them? I get that it's a shared problem, not a Heathrow Airport problem, but given that you had imposed the passenger cap yourselves?
Well, it was a difficult situation for everyone, and this is a shared problem, not just at Heathrow, actually, but around the world. And I think every part of the world has had challenges in scaling up quickly, particularly those that were worst hit by COVID restrictions. And the UK was worse hit than our competitors in Europe. But actually, we have worked together with airlines and their ground handlers to build back capacity. We have a very collaborative approach at the airport because if you're traveling, you don't care who is providing service. You just want to have a seamless journey. And that's part of my job as the airport operator to coordinate all of those 400 companies on the airport to give you a seamless service and to step in if need be to make sure that we can keep supply and demand in balance. That was a difficult choice we made before the summer. We had been talking with airlines about it beforehand. I do feel a lot of sympathy for airlines and passengers who had some disruption when we first brought the cap in. But thereafter, actually, we gave very good service through the summer. And the measure I look at is what passengers are telling me, not just when I'm working in the terminals myself and people are getting through check-in and security far quicker than they expected, but also when I look at the survey results that show that we were, in terms of passenger satisfaction, very close to the high levels of service that we saw back in 2019.
And John, just finally, in terms of really solving this issue, medium and long term, is it all down to being able to find the right staff, given understandably that your industry cut staff during the pandemic, and building back up has been harder than the process of perhaps laying people off? Are there any changes you'd like to see from the government, the authorities, to make hiring easier? I mean, it's an industry where, of course, we want safety first, so maybe that makes that tricky.
Well, you're exactly right. It is just a scale challenge. We're going from 50,000 people to 75,000 people. We're about halfway there at the moment. We're all working super hard. You've got to recruit the right people with a good service culture. You've got to get them through security clearance to make sure that they are not a security risk. And then you've got to train them up in the specific skills they need. Many very skilled jobs across the airport. And it just takes time to physically do all of that, no matter how hard you work at it. The one thing government has helped us with, but could help us with more, is on the security clearance side. And the main thing that takes time is validating people's employment history over the last 5 years. And if government could give us easier access to the HMRC data records, which has a lot of the information that we need, that would make it quicker to get through security clearance. And where that helps is that a lot of people, of course, are applying for jobs at other employers other than on the airport. And if they get their job being able to start before they've got the security clearance for Heathrow, then we lose them from the whole process. So we have to start again in recruiting a good person. So cutting down the security clearance time without losing any level of security would really help us.